Alright, I'm just going to send it. This is my first video for the channel, so please forgive me if it's a little bit wonky. I'm probably not even going to really do any editing either. Just going to one take this shit and kind of go for it. But long story short, this is going to be about workers, because I get asked this quite often in chat. How do you know when to push more workers? So there's a couple different basic rules that we'll get into a little bit here as we go into Sandbox, but for the most part, the number one thing you need to realize is that you only can push workers when the enemy has sent you. If you have not received any sends, you cannot push workers. It's just going to hurt your own economy because you're going to be getting leaked when inevitably they send and you've pushed too far. So the rule of thumb is to go one worker every time you've received 40 Mythium. So we're going to just quickly go into a lobby like this.
Welcome to Nova.
Now let's say we go to... I'm just going to max cat stacks real quick so I don't leak on the waves I'm explaining this. Add a little split. Which, by the way, I'll be doing a split video another time. But what we can look at is we're going to go to wave 4. And let's say on wave 4, they send me a lizard and a snail. And they send that, and I hold. I'm probably going to hold here. I think this will hold. I did not test this ahead of time, so keep that in mind. The general rule of thumb, though, I received 60 Mythium. How many times does 40 go into 60? 1. So I can for sure push one worker. Depending on how good I am the wave after this one, so wave 5, you might be able to get away with pushing 2 workers off a 60 send. Those 20s are going to be kind of your buffer zones, right? If someone's sending you on those buffers every time, you might be able to push 2 workers off of it. But if we go back to wave 4, and let's say I get... I'm going to make sure I leak here, because I don't know if this will leak otherwise. Let's say we get a dino and a snail. And we start. This is 100 Mythium, right? We could theoretically push 2 to 3 workers off this. What you need to look for, though, okay, if I get this big of a send, how much do I leak? And this, I think, is going to be too big of an extreme example. Yes, it is. Regardless, if you leak 125%, you're not going to be wanting to push many workers, if any, off of that. Especially this early in the game. You want to try to rebound and recover. So, let's go back to wave 4. And let's say we had the pack rat back, and I don't know, this. We'll get the same 100 send, but we won't leak nearly as bad. The end goal here is to really show you if we were to get, like, let's say a 40% leak, a 50% leak, we're going to be looking at pushing half as much. Look at that leak percentage as a gauge of how much you can really push. Of the 100, we kill the send, we get a couple creeps killed here. We're looking at probably a 2 push out of the 3 that you could. Maybe a 1 depending on how bad you are the next wave. 58%, you can probably push the 2, maybe just the 1, depending again on how you are the next wave. Another thing that people often ask me is, Flight, I got 40 send of king ups. It won't show it up here, but let's say they sent you 40 send of king ups, they incomed 2 snails, then they 60 cent king, whatever it may be. Those king ups still apply in the same way that mercenaries do. No matter if they're sending them as gold, in terms of sends that you're going to kill, or they're sending them as king ups. That pressure is now relieved off you, and you can still push out of that 100 that you got send. As long as you hold, you can still push that 2 to 3 workers. Again, it always depends on how you look the next wave. If you get that 20, that 20 is going to be that kind of that money shot where it may work, it may not. That's something to keep in mind. And the same thing can be said for when you're sending. If you're sending someone king ups, people often say, well, I'm not feeding the enemy if I'm king upping. And I get that often in chat. I'm not feeding the enemy if I'm king upping. But at the end of the day, you're relieving that pressure off someone if I go and put 4 into king. I'm not stopping that person from pushing 2 workers. All I'm doing is giving up pressure and allowing them to push as much as they want. So they might be able to push 2. They might be able to push 3. They know for a fact you do not have any Mythium to send to them. At the end of the day, you're better off trying to actually leak someone, even with income sends, than you are just throwing away your money with king ups. Now, if you wanted to, let's say we're coming down to the wire and the wave's over. Let's say we start this here. I'm going to leak. That's fine. Or actually, this might help. Anyway. Let's say you go through the wave and you have 100 Mythium. You're at 96, right? You're at 96, the wave ends, you don't have enough time to send that 100 send. You really wanted the Cannoneer. In that situation, going something like Dino and then waiting until king up and get that extra king up in after the fact is not necessarily a negative, but you still are relieving pressure on the person. So there is some wiggle room there. There's some play. It still gives you the income. You still gain that 24 that you wouldn't have got if you had king upped after the income was already given for the wave. And then you're just kind of throwing away that king up. It doesn't really matter, but that's better than full king upping. If you really want to king up, I know a lot of new players like to king up. That's an option. Let me just see here. I guess I'll explain how the income phase works because I kind of talked about that quick. So the other thing you got to look at, people often ask, why can't you just king up? There's 2 phases. There's the build phase, which we're in now, and there's then the attack phase. If you send an item in the attack phase, you get that income for the coming wave, so you always gain that extra income. When you're sending just a snail versus a king up, it doesn't seem like much, but that's 6 gold for 1 round. Now, if you do that every single wave, you're looking at, okay, it might be 6 gold for the first wave. It might be 18 gold for the next wave that you send only king ups. It might be 36 gold. That gold will start to add up. That might be the difference between you pushing an extra worker early. It might be the difference between pushing that worker later. And that 10 extra Mythium might make a difference by wave 10, whatever it may be. The only other thing I could think of really to add to this video, their workers are all based on increments of 10 seconds. So if you have 10 workers, you'll gain 10 Mythium every 10 seconds. If you have 3 workers, you'll gain 3 Mythium every 10 seconds. So gaining that extra worker early can be really important, especially trying to then, again, scale your composition and get more sends out. I guess that's kind of it. For the most part, if people have more questions, feel free to ask in my chat when I'm online, whatever I can try to help you with in stream. But for the most part, that's kind of it. Can't think of anything else. So I'm going to end video here. Peace.